So I want to talk about my experience cold calling, and I want to open this up by saying I do not cold call every day. The most I've ever cold called is 2 hours in one day. I have an existing business. I do this for supplemental business. It makes me feel a little bit more in control of the listings I have, the people I'm in touch with. You know, you can go to an open house and sit there for 3 or 4 hours and nobody comes in. Just like I can cold call for 2 hours, but on the 2.5 hours, somebody finally picks up, or I finally get a green light. It's a numbers game. And I think because I have an existing business, I don't have a ton of pressure to do this all day, every day, or for multiple hours every day. So I just want to open with the fact, like, this is supplemental for me. And it was primarily, I did this to get my Miami business off the ground. By the time you see this, it will be January or February of 2026, but this is December 2025. I have closed one listing. I obviously had the seller and I also represented the buyer. I currently have one listing. It's a $1.2 million listing. And on deck, I know 3 listings for sure. And a couple of those are going to have to buy. And some of those people have actually become really good friends already. Like, you have to think about this. This is a long game. So when you are doing circle prospecting, you are building your future pipeline. When you're calling expireds, you're building your now pipeline. I had RedX at the most of 2025, and that's where I got my 2 current listings, or my current listing and my closed listing. And then I decided to go away with it because I was having a hard time with that. I felt like I had too much pressure on me every day to cold call. Part of that's just who I am. And so I decided to put that to a stop. And then I started with batch leads to do the circle prospecting. And I got really frustrated because I didn't have any now business. But now that I've been using circle prospecting probably since July, I'm starting to have that build up and conversations and meetings and strategies are getting put into place from the people I talked to July, August, September. And we're going to be listing in January or February of 2026. So it's actually kind of cool. Like, now that I've been doing this long enough, I have that. So who do I use? I use Enzo Dialer. They call 14 lines at a time. I love it. It's fast. If you go back and you look at your numbers, you actually can call like 800 people in 2 hours. So it's very effective. I also use RedX for expires and batch leads for circle prospecting. So the first thing I have learned is that the more days I show up to cold call, the easier it becomes. Just like the more days I avoid cold calling, the harder it becomes. And it's a numbers game. So there's some days where it's like, I'm calling, it's been 2 hours and nothing is happening. It's just no, 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 no. And other days it's like I'm sitting there doing it begrudgingly, but people are answering. I'm having decent conversations. Oh yeah, sure, you can call me in 6 months or call me at the end of the year. And I'm like, okay. So the key to cold calling is that you have to create a follow-up system. If you don't have a follow-up system, then there's really no point in cold calling. Now, you want to treat this as a relationship-based client. Because if you don't, then you just have a whole bunch of phone numbers and emails. My God, it's been a long day. And you're not doing anything with it. So they're not going to remember you when you follow up with them in 6 months. It's almost like you got to do it every 3 months, once a quarter, instead of when they ask, which is every 6 months or even once a year. They're not going to remember you. When I have a great conversation with someone, I send them a thank you note. I want them to remember me. And when it gets returned, because for whatever reason, the thank you note was returned back to me, I take a picture of it and I text it to them. And I say, hey, I sent you a thank you note, but it didn't go through. It got returned. And they're like, oh, that's so nice of you, blah, blah, blah. And I've actually gotten business like, hey, after our conversation, I thought about it and I kind of want to see what's out there so I can maybe buy something and then we'd have to sell. So that has turned into business. So I highly suggest the thank you note. I've also learned how mean old people are. At least the area that I'm calling, there's quite a few people who've been in their house for 30, 40, 50 years. You know, one spouse has died or they're just waiting to die and they tell you that openly. They tell you how many times they've remodeled because they've been in the house for 40 years. I wouldn't say they're all pleasant conversations because the old people kind of know that you're calling because they're going to be dying soon. So they're the worst, in my opinion. They're the meanest. But I try to take that opportunity when they want to chat with me on the phone and turn it into a potential. So what I mean by that is if they're telling me how they're going to die, I use that as the in to start saying, well, who's going to sell your house? If you leave it to your kids and they don't want it, who's going to sell your house? And they're like, oh, I haven't really thought about that. I just figured they're going to do whatever they want with it. And I'm like, well, can I drop off my resume and you can give it to your son? I do that. I have them printed and I go drop it off at the house with a little thank you note in there. I don't get a call. I don't get anything, but I'm kind of hoping that like in X amount of years, I will get something from that. So I'm always looking for opportunities with this, because as much as it's a no, and my cold calling coach says, like, you don't want to put someone in your CRM if it's a forced thing, because when you force it, there's no way to relate to them or have a relationship or call to follow up. It's not a pleasant conversation. You want it to be an easy in. So the other thing I do, I know I'm scattered all over, but I have a lot to say. The other thing I do is when somebody says, oh, I don't own, I say, oh, if you're a renter, when's your lease up? Are you going to be buying? Do you need help finding another rental, right? Like I'm trying to get in. So every no, I try to turn it into some sort of opportunity for myself. And people who are in sales will really appreciate that. They're like, oh, wow, you're a driver. I'm like, yes, ma'am, I am. The other surprising thing for old people being mean is how nice people are. Not everybody wants to give you their contact information, but I did have one lady who was in the hospital at that moment when I called her with her husband, who was sent to the ER for an emergency. And I called her and she was so nice. And she said, you know, I'm actually at the ER with my husband. We just arrived here. Is it okay if you call me back in 3 weeks? I called her back. I sent that thank you note. And by the time I called in 3 weeks, I apologized. And she said, you were so nice on the phone. I was so happy to hear your voice. You were kind. You were friendly. And I really appreciated the thank you note when I got home. And I said, I can't believe how nice you were. If I were in your position, I would have been a witch. And I know that. I would have been like, why are you calling me? My husband's in the hospital. Like, I know that about myself. And she was so kind and gracious. People are teaching me new ways to be. They're opening my eyes to things about myself that I maybe didn't see or that I do know but would love to change. So it's almost like these people are unknowingly setting examples for me. I think it's kind of cool, actually. The worst thing that can happen is people hang up. I have that written down because I think I've said this in other videos. I have been at open houses and I pulled my gun out twice and I felt unsafe 3 times. The first time was when I didn't have a gun and went and got one, and then I pulled it out 2 more times. So when I put it into that perspective that I would rather feel safe in my home, and the worst thing that's going to happen is somebody hangs up on me, I'll take it. Also, you can do this whenever you want. There's no like set schedule versus an open house, because that's how I started my business. So I appreciate the fact that I can do it from 10 to 12. I can do it from 3 to 5. Those things, I like that flexibility. There is a possibility that you can get turned in. I don't know who you get turned into, but that when they turn you in, I think it's like a $4,000 fine. I don't know that. I don't think anything happens to your license necessarily, but I do think that there's some sort of strike against you. It hasn't happened to me. When people are upset and they say, I'm on the do not call list, I always say, I just want to remind you, you do have to update that annually. You can't add yourself 10 years ago and then all of a sudden you're still on it. Like, you have to update yourself annually. Would you like the phone number again? It kind of diffuses the situation. Again, I'm always looking to bring some value because I want them to know that, like, I am sorry. And I'll tell them it didn't show up here, which means it might have expired. Cold calling, I have found, can be a little addicting. I know that sounds weird, but once you start tracking it and doing it every day and you're having these conversations and you're meeting people, I have people who've become very good friends. I think I cold called them in October and it's December, and I've seen them like 4 times and they've become good friends with my sister. Like, that is so cool. My life is enriched because of one phone call, and they have said on multiple occasions, I'm so glad you called us. So it's really cool. It's really neat. I probably should have opened with this because this is like the gold. So if you're still watching this, thank you. Okay, here's 2 things. I try to pick up renters as buyers. I can't remember if I already said that. So if somebody tells you that they're renting, ask them, when is your lease up? What do you plan to do afterwards? Just start being inquisitive about that topic. Do they have a real estate agent? Do they ever want to buy? Are they moving out of state, right? Like, at least try to get a referral fee, like something to help yourself in your business and make it worth your time. Now, this is the gold. When I have a buyer, I will call everybody in the neighborhood or even the zip code and say, I have a buyer. We've looked at everything on market. They keep losing out on offers, which in this particular case was true. It is such a better in than just, hey, just curious if you ever want to sell your house. People are more open to it. They are willing to talk to you. They want to brag about their house. They want to tell you everything they've done upgrade-wise, what their neighbors are doing, why I should call their neighbors. I mean, It is such a different world to have an actual buyer. I never actually was yelled at. Nobody ever said to me like, hey, do you actually have a buyer? But I also don't want to lie. It's just me. I don't want to say I have a buyer and I don't have a buyer. And then I have to come in for the preview and then I tell them no. So I like to have somebody who's actively looking. The other way I use cold calling is when I get a new listing, I call all of the homeowners in that building or in that community or that just live close by. And I let them know that my listing just hit the market. It's genius. And this is how I've picked up a couple people. So you're not asking these people for anything because you are telling them what you have. And hey, if you like living here, do you have any friends or family that want to live in this building? And that has been super great. A lot of people are willing to have that conversation. A lot of people ask me to text or email them the listing so they can review it because they hadn't seen it yet. I don't do anything with it. I don't take their email and go put them in my CRM. I guess I could ask if they want me to, but I think that's annoying, so I don't do it to other people. But it's been a really interesting year with cold calling. I have surprisingly loved having the tool in my back pocket. Like I said, it is not my primary lead generation, which I think I'm secretly grateful for. Because some days I just can't make it to the phone, right? Like you're busy, you have things you have to do. So it's been a really positive experience. I am very grateful that I was in a pinch and pushed myself to do this. I spent $6,000 on my real estate cold calling course. I love the guy who leads it. I found him on YouTube. He is wonderful. I've never met him. I've never spoke to him, but he gives good advice and he breaks things down. He's very thorough. I feel like we are talking to each other when I'm watching his videos because he and I feel that he and I have very similar standards, boundaries, the way we operate our business. His name is Brandon Mullenin, if you haven't heard of him. I just wanted to share that because I know people are so curious and cold calling has such a bad rap. So as we progress, I will continue to update you, but I don't think this needs to be like a main video on my page. So I'm just going to continue updating you as we go along in this cold calling journey. So cheers.